So you might think it's impossible to be a physique competitor, an Ironman triathlon athlete, a weightlifting bodybuilder, and a full-time accountant, but it turns out that it's not. Our guest today is all of those things and more. So welcome to the podcast, Megan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Man, happy to be here.
It's a pretty impressive list right there. So actually, Blakely and I's history with Megan goes back well over 20 years, if you can believe that or not. Why don't you tell everybody how we met back in the day?
Yeah, so we met back working at good old World Foot Locker in Baybrook Mall, which was like a one-of-a-kind store. It was like my favorite store growing up. And then as soon as I turned 16, I applied there and met y'all. And
So you said World Foot Locker, but I don't think anybody really knows what that means. Why don't you tell
right.
everybody what that means and what the difference is between what they're picturing a Foot Locker being like and what a World Foot Locker was like?
Yeah, I mean, a World Foot Locker was like 4 times the size of a regular Foot Locker, which we eventually downgraded to just a regular Foot Locker, but it was like clothes, shoes, hats, like just such a huge selection of everything. It was crazy.
So was it like you mentioned when you turned 16, you applied to work there? Was that like something you were kind of like chomping at the bit to go do because you liked the store? Because I remember you shopping there a lot with your family even before you worked there.
Yeah, I knew I was gonna have to get a job somewhere, so I was like, that's definitely the place I want to work the most. So just so I could use my employee discount, you know.
And I'm pretty sure I've seen on your Instagram that you're still kind of into like shoes and stuff, right?
Yeah, specifically Nike. That's kind of like all over, but I
That's
love
your jam.
gray Nike shoes. Is what I
I,
like. Yeah.
I also like to think that because of the time we worked together there at Foot Locker, that we had some influence over your musical tastes, which carry on to today.
Yes, I am forever grateful to you for introducing me to my favorite music of all time, which is Vertical Horizon circa 1990s.
That's there's
I
how
still
many
listen
other
to that.
people even know about that music?
They're lost. I listen to it all the time. Still, yeah.
I like when you post pictures of what you're listening to in your truck, and it's
Yeah.
typically something that I like also. I wasn't going to bring this up, but it just came to mind that we also have a similar interest in the kind of cars and trucks that we like too. You're another Toyota off-road fan.
Yep, big Toyota fan. I've had a lifted Tacoma, lifted Tundra, and now I've got a lifted 4Runner. So
Yeah, I haven't shown Blakely the pictures of your lifted 4Runner yet for the reason that I don't want to have to spend the money on a lift kit.
yeah,
So I'm pretty sure once she sees it, she's going to like it. So before we get into talk about like all of the athletic things that you've done and are currently doing as an adult, tell us more about, your relationship with athletics growing up as a kid and adolescence and into college. What did you do and how did you get into that stuff?
yeah. So I have a twin sister. We've always been very active. We grew up playing like, just like the t-ball into softball, soccer, basketball, just kind of like since the time we were 5 up through like freshman year of high school. I played basically softball and basketball. And then at Meredith also. But once I hit the high school, I wasn't great at either. I was just like good enough to do it because like that's what all the kids are doing. And my sophomore year of high school, they started a girls lacrosse team, which was pretty rare. I grew up in the Houston area, and we were, there was maybe like 10 teams total in the whole Houston area, and so
Yeah.
I was a goalkeeper and
Ooh.
really kind of found my groove there and just really had a ton of like confidence. And I don't
Wow.
know if it's just because there wasn't like much competition because there wasn't many people on the team. But I was really pretty good and was able to, so played through high school, playing lacrosse, and then was able to play on a travel team and kind of see the country, going to the East Coast for tournaments, Colorado for tournaments, and that was huge as far as like really kind of showing me like I can be good at something.
Hmm.
And then I actually got recruited to play lacrosse at University of Dallas, which is a small private Catholic school, but they were going to be the first NCAA women's lacrosse team in Texas. And so played there. was able to see even more of the country. We're, played most of our game. Since we were the only team in Texas, we had to travel everywhere. So we had to go all up and down the West Coast, up and down the East Coast. So that
Wow.
was a fantastic experience. And so I played lacrosse through college.
Yeah, I think of lacrosse as a more I grew up mostly in the South and never even heard of lacrosse. So
Right.
I think of it more of a Western or a Northeastern sport. I can't think of a more terrifying position to play in lacrosse than the goalkeeper.
Yeah, man, so I took some brutal shots, but it was, and typically like you'd see goalies with either like soccer shin guards or like catcher, like softball catcher shin guards,
Yeah.
like padded shorts. And I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I wore just a chest protector, gloves, and a helmet. And I was like,
Wow.
it's like if I don't want it, if I don't want it to hit me, I got to catch it. So, and I think that made me be a lot more, I was really mobile. So I think that led to a lot of my success.
Wow. And I guess now that I know this about you, that's going to like translate into some of the other things that we're going to talk about, your willingness to do hard things and put yourselves in tough circumstances for sure. Yeah, that's just scary to think about, because I think a lot of people, if somebody's listening to this and they don't quite grasp the scariness of this, those lacrosse balls are the things that you have to work on the knots in your muscles. You know how hard that thing is and what that would feel like to
solid rubber. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take one of those to the shin and at about, point blank range. It's rough.
So the traveling team, was that when you were in high school, or was that like a gap between high school and college?
That was in high school. Yeah, that was my junior and senior year of high school. It was called the Houston Heat, and it was kind of, you tried
awesome.
out. And it was kind of the sort of the best players from the Houston area. So it was really cool.
That is really cool. Not a lot of high schoolers get that opportunity to travel the country for sure.
We went to Vail, Colorado, and that was my first time on a plane. I remember.
It makes sense that they flew you instead of trying to drive you guys on a bus to Vail.
Oh, right.
So after the Foot Locker days, Blakely and I kind of lost touch with you, and you didn't start your Instagram account until 2016. So there weren't a whole lot of clues as to what was going on in that time. So besides lacrosse, I know endurance sports became a big part of your life and your training. How does your love for endurance sports kind of fall into the timeline of everything, and how did you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, so I kind of got into it, believe it or not. So I'm a big Lance Armstrong fan, love him or hate him. He's my hero. And reading his book, It's Not About the Bike, and just everything he was going through. And I was like, if he can do this, like I can do anything. And so that was my junior year of college. And I enjoyed running. During the summers I would run. But then being a goalkeeper in lacrosse, I didn't really run a lot like during the season or that much. So I was like, let me sign up for a marathon. So my junior year of college, I signed up for my first marathon, which was the Dallas. It was the White Rock Marathon, which is now the BMW marathon. Did that, and that was the race itself was a little anticlimactic. When I crossed the finish line, I was like, oh, that was it. But it was the discipline and the training and the dedication it took to like being terrified of like, I have to train or I'm not going to be able to finish this. And I was like, man, that was a really cool experience to not look at the day that I did that race, but to look at the 4 months that I trained for it and really see kind of how that process changed me. And
that's very interesting. And I want to talk more about that for sure. How long was it between the time that you decided you wanted to run a marathon and when the race was?
Probably like 6 months.
Okay. I don't really know a whole lot about marathon training. Is that typically long enough to train for a marathon, or how did you go about that?
Yeah, I think like a 12 to 16 weeks. So like depending on your shape, like your first one, a lot of times people, it's like 6 months or so is probably good. If you're more advanced, like, 4 months or a little less. But
okay. Does anybody else in your family have experience with these kind of endurance things, or were you the first generation?
Yeah, I was the first one. And Meredith, my sister, she came and supported me at that. It was so funny because like my mom, my sister, my older sister, my dad, they were all like so excited for me. And so we're like, okay, we're going to run with you a mile, like the last like 4 miles. We'll each run a mile with you. And so they had been training, thinking like, okay, but she's going to be dead by the time she gets there. And like, we can just walk with her. And I left them all in the dust. Like, they were like, we're not ready. I was like, I got to go. I'm sorry.
I'm not waiting up. I got a time to beat.
Yeah. So that was funny. But Meredith, my sister Meredith, so she kind of fell in love with it. She was like, well, I got to do one now. And so she's done a lot more marathons than me.
Interesting.
She, ignited the fire with her again.
I didn't know that. So who has the best marathon time between you and Meredith?
I don't know. I think we're about the same. Well, I ran a 4:12, which is my best. Well, actually, that's not true. I ran a 4:12 like, in an actual race,
right.
And like a virtual one that we did, which was, you can control a lot more. I ran a 3:57, so I think that's technically the best between us, but it's a non-official time. So yeah.
Well, maybe after she listens to this, kind of reignite a little bit of competitive spirit. Maybe we'll have a throwdown.
Right. Yeah.
I also know that you've done a lot of triathlons. Can you tell everybody about like the different kinds of triathlons and the ones that you're most proud of doing?
Yeah. So I started off doing kind of the same thing in college. When I was home for summers, I would do duathlons, which is just run, bike, run. Because I was terrified of swimming. I've never been a good swimmer. I didn't think I knew how to swim. I was like, let me just stay out of the water, run, bike, run, and be good. And funny enough, it was a CrossFit competition I did that had a swimming event, and I won the swimming event. And I was like, well, I guess I can't swim. so then that gave me the courage to do a triathlon. So I started with the super sprint, which is like super fast, like less than an hour. And then did some sprints.
What are kind of the distances that you do in a sprint
super
triathlon?
Sprint might be like a 250 to 300 yard swim, like maybe like a 12-mile bike, and then a 5K run.
Okay. So that might be a good entry point for somebody looking to get into these triathlons.
Yeah. And then sprints are a little bit longer. Typically the swim might be a little bit longer. The bike might be like 15 miles, but still it's at 5K. And then you get into the Olympic distance, which is like 0.9 miles swim, 25-mile bike, 10K run. And then you get into the half iron distance, all that. So I had been doing sprints, and then I did an Olympic. And then while I was doing CrossFit at the time, and I was kind of feeling like, I can do anything. So I signed up for a half Ironman, because that had kind of always been a goal between Meredith and I to do Ironman branded races. So either the half or the full. So I did the half and hated it. I was like, I was scared to death on the swim, never put my head underwater. My neck was like wrecked by the time I got on the bike. I was like,
yeah.
And I just really underestimated the distance, and it humbled me quickly.
Interesting.
And so I was like, I'll just do a couple rides. CrossFit will get me through it. And it did mentally, but then it was a rough day. So I did the half Ironman and hated it. And they say endurance athletes have like the shortest memory ever, because like during the race you're like, I'm never doing this again. I never want to look at a bike again. And then the next day you're like, that wasn't too bad. So then like maybe like a month later, I signed up for a full Ironman. And my girlfriend Crystal was like, what in the world are you thinking? Like you hated doing half of it.
She should have got it in writing.
Right. So then I really went back to that same half Ironman, which was in Galveston the next year, trained for it, prepared for it, because I was like, okay, I need to enjoy this if I'm going to be doing this leading into my full Ironman. And once I was prepared, it was a totally different story. I really enjoyed it and really loved it. And so that led me to my first Ironman, which is probably like one of the races out of all the races I've done that I'm most proud of, because it was just like such a huge thing. It kind of, as you can see, bucket list item that I had always wanted to do it, and finally did it. So.
And when was that first Ironman, and is that the only one that you've done?
That was 2016, and then funny enough, Meredith was there also. She was like my Sherpa, which is someone that just helps you with all your stuff, and that lit a fire under her. So she said, I'm doing it next year. So then I, I was like, well, I'll do it with you. So we went back the next year and did it together and stayed together the whole day. And it was, again, on that day, you would have thought we hated each other, would have never like talked to each other again. You know, she would make me cry, I would make her cry. And then the next day we're like, that was the best day of our lives. You know, so.
Did you guys stay together during that race?
We did, yeah. So on the
That's
swim,
so cool.
yeah, I would breathe to my left, she would breathe to her right, and we just swam together. On the bike, it was pretty easy to stay together, and then on the run, yeah, stayed together.
That's so cool. And I'm assuming, you know, you can't just decide one day, even after doing the sprint triathlons and the half Ironman, that, you know, you're just going to go do an Ironman and go do it. There's some amount of training that you know you're going to have to do, so you don't just fall flat on your face. What is your kind of overall approach to training for these big endurance events? And do you structure your own training? Does somebody do it for you? Just kind of give us a little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, I always kind of approached it pretty loosely, which I always kind of had a goal of, I just want to finish, especially for that first one, was like, I just want to finish. I don't have a goal time, just want to finish. The second was, I just want to stay with Meredith and be strong enough to be strong for her. And so with endurance plans, and I would typically just get them, you know, download them, find one on the internet, download it. I never really worked with a coach. And it would, you either have training plans that are by distance, which say, okay, go run 10 miles today, or by time, which might say, okay, go run for 90 minutes today. And so I typically would enjoy training by time and just see what I could do in that time, you know, at a certain level. And for the Ironman, I believe it was about a 4-month training plan. And that's another one where you're the unknown kind of terrifies you, that you're like, I can't miss this training session because I don't want missing this to be the thing that keeps me from finishing. Which was, I hadn't had a taste of that since that first marathon. So that was cool. And then the second one, I got, you know, I still trained for it, but I was kind of like, okay, I know what it feels like. I know, like, you know, for instance, the bike is my weak point. So I'm like, I'm going to hammer the bike a little bit harder. I know the running will be there. Swimming, I can swim, you know, 5 times a week or 2 times a week, and I'm not going to get any better. So like, I was like, I'll just do what I have to do on the swim. But yeah, that's kind of.
I think the thing that stands out to me in that is that, you know, you knew going into it that it was going to be a long preparation time. And I think that's one thing that holds a lot of people back, is they have such short-sightedness when it comes to reaching their goals, that the goal is the only thing they're fixated on, and they skip past the whole part of the process that you have to go through. You know, and that's really where the magic happens, both in like the preparation for the event and the personal growth that you go through leading up to actually competing the thing.
Exactly.
Has that kind of been your experience too?
Yeah, that's the part I love, because like I was saying, from back to that first marathon where it was like the day of, I was just like, oh, okay, like that was fun, you know, but it's like, that's like a 4-hour window of time. When you look back at what you've been able to accomplish over 4 to 6 months, it's like, so it's like the daily grind, the structure, the routine, like, I love it.
Is it fair to say that like the completion of the actual event had less change on your mindset than the actual process of going through the training?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. We had Carlos Ibarra on episode 58. I know you know Carlos also. He was about at that time to take on a 100-mile ultra marathon through the mountains of Colorado. And we talked a lot about like the mental battles that you go through in these long endurance events, the things that go on inside your head. Have you ever wanted to quit during a race? And if so, how did you kind of push through that time?
Yeah, probably so. Probably like on that second Ironman, we hit mile 100 on the bike, and like a huge storm had blown through, and it was so windy. And when you're on a bike riding into a headwind at 100 miles and you're exhausted, so we knew, so a bike of an Ironman is 112 miles. So we knew we had 12 miles to go, but we looked down and we were moving like 12 miles an hour, which is incredibly slow. And we were like, we are literally, like, we are so close, but it's going to be another hour. Like, I cannot do it. Like, and then I got to run a marathon. Like, it was like, I mean, I think I had a mental breakdown at that point, but like, it was like, you just got to keep I mean, literally every pedal stroke you take or every step you take gets you one step further, not even to the finish line, but to being done. Like that's what
Yeah,
you're
done
looking
with
forward
that.
to.
What do you think about in those moments where it's like, is there a trick you use in your mind to take your mind off of the pain that you're in? This could translate into what we'll talk about in a little bit too with intense CrossFit workouts too. But how do you get out of your own way in those times where you are having those mental battles inside?
Yeah, a lot of times I think if I just keep moving, it will be over. Like this isn't going to go on forever. It's going to be over soon. So you just got to keep moving towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So keep in perspective really about
right.
this is not a
Exactly. Yeah.
permanent thing that you're in.
Yeah, and perspective is huge because it's like, I mean, there's so much in the world where people are battling illnesses or what have you. And it's like, if me pedaling a bike is my worst problem right now, like it's not too bad. So perspective is a big thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know that this is kind of changing gears a little bit, but I know you take recovery really seriously because you put your body through all these things. And you've tried a lot of different things over the years as far as recovery goes, I'm assuming. What have you found are some of the most helpful things for you to continue staying healthy and recovered for all this stuff that you do?
Yeah. Sleep is number one. Like people make fun of me, but I go to bed at like 8 o'clock every night. I'm pretty much like, I got to go. And then, so, I mean, I'm getting 8+ hours of sleep minimum a night. So sleep is huge. Normatec boots, I love those. I have a pair of those that I get in all the time,
Tell
especially when I
everybody
was
what
doing.
those are. Probably a lot of our listeners don't know what that is.
Okay, so it's compression boots that it's kind of a whole system. You just slide your legs in, zip them up, and it's just compression. So it's like if you have like a blood pressure cuff, like one of those that tightens, it just does that to your legs. So it just helps with like blood flow and kind of recirculating blood through there.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Foam rolling. Ice baths every now and again. I don't really do them a ton, but when we used to have our pool, when it was cold in the winter, I would love to jump in there.
Yeah.
Food, I think nutrition is huge. It's like, premium fuel versus, junky unleaded fuel. So that makes a big difference as far as
Yeah.
inflammation. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
rest days. Like I'm very big on, I get like every fourth day now is a rest day and I'm totally rest. Whereas back in the day, I was like, well, I can just do this. I can just do a light workout. I can do, I was just obsessed with always moving. And now I take the rest seriously.
Yeah. And I think you probably mentioned the most important one right at the beginning there that most people gloss over and think there's got to be a better hack for. But yes, sleep is magic.
It really is.
Miss 2 nights of good sleep and there's all kinds of things going on inside your body that you don't know are happening to you in addition to just the fatigue that you feel on the outside.
Right. Yeah. If you can feel fatigue, it's too late. I think it's kind of like dehydration.
Yeah. Okay. Let's flip things on their head here and talk about a completely different impressive thing that you've done and you continue to do. When you think about an endurance athlete, you don't exactly think of somebody who looks super strong and especially not somebody, muscular enough to get into a bathing suit and step onto a bodybuilding stage. So tell us about your experience with how you got into physique sports and where you're at currently with that.
Yeah, so I did my first bodybuilding show in 2012. It was Texas State Naturals in Round Rock. Also, we were talking about that earlier. And I don't know, I had always I've loved like muscle and fitness magazines and like always like wanted, like knew that was my goal body was to be like muscular. And after getting into CrossFit and, gaining some strength, gaining some muscles, I was like, now I know the only part that's missing is the diet. And I don't know if I could do it, but I want to try. And then I'm pretty like modest when it comes to like, clothing and all that. And so like, even my mom, I remember her saying like, you're not really going to do this, right? Like you do know you have to like get on stage in like a tiny bikini. And I was like, I know, but that's my motivation to stick to the plan.
Right.
So that kind of lit a fire under me, like, and she's like the most supportive person in the world. But I was just like, okay, like I'll show you I can do it. So yeah, it was really the diet aspect that I had never like tapped into, and so I mean, that first show, I didn't know anything. And still, even afterwards, didn't. I hated the process. Just like the first Ironman. I just felt sorry for myself. I just thought, like, this is the end of the world. I'm hungry, and it was just, I had the total wrong mental approach. And once I got after the show, I was like, I never want to do this again. Like, I'm going to eat here. I'm going to eat here. I'm going to do this, go to this restaurant, and like, never did any of that. I was like, I'm going to be having like sourdough jacks all the time. Never got one, And then, so then it took me, and so like, just to get, so I'm 5'9", and I was about 120 pounds on stage. So I was very, very lean, but not very muscular. It looked like I was muscular because I was the lead, but it really, in the scheme of things, I wasn't. So it took me, let's see, 9 years to kind of get the mentally prepare myself to do another show. And so I did, or 7 years, I guess, because I did it in 2019. Yeah. So 2019, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I can do this again. I'm like more mature. I've got a better perspective. Like, I've done all this endurance stuff, which has really helped my mindset. Let's give it another go. And so it really was a totally kind of different experience, because I went into it thinking, like, I chose to do this, if not being able to eat a cookie is my worst problem, that's bad, I can do this. So I had a much better physique, much better time with the diet. I really didn't struggle hardly at all. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get right back into Ironman training for 2020 Ironman Texas. And then obviously COVID happened, that got canceled. So I was like, okay, Ironman's out of the way. I'm really going to just buckle, and focus on bodybuilding kind of for the next long while, so that I can really build a physique and build the muscle that when I diet down, there's something left. So that I really started training for that in 2020, just kind of trying to like bulk. And I'm working with a coach now for a show next May. But even then, it's like, that's a long ways away. And I'm still, it's still check-ins every week, 6 meals a day, meal plan, like, it's very structured, it's very clean, and it's kind of the long haul. Because like you said, it's, I don't think I'm gonna, in a month, I'm not going to be ready to step on stage. Like, I need to get ready to start the diet, to then, diet for 4 months and step on stage. So really kind of taking the approach for this next show of what I've learned from the last two, of like everything I did wrong, or, I'm really just trying to set myself up to be my best physique ever. I just turned 38. So my goal is by the time I'm 40 to have like my dream physique. So this one's kind of the long haul. So
that's so awesome. So when you did the show in 2012, were you basically getting on stage after dieting? You dieted down to lose body fat, but as far as muscle goes, like, it was basically the muscle that you had built doing CrossFit, I assume.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I was doing, it was insane. I was doing cardio in the morning, strength training, and then CrossFit workouts at night. So I was like, it was a lot of energy expenditure.
Talk about a recovery demand.
Right. Yeah. It was crazy. And
I think we've had other people on the podcast that have done bodybuilding before. And I think, being a bodybuilder requires way more discipline than people realize. How consistent do you have to be with your nutrition and your training if you're really going to, get up there in that tiny bikini, or a guy, and even less?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've got to be like 95 to 100% if you're not, like, say, genetically gifted. And so I feel like I'm not. Plus, I'm older. So it really, like, the diet is, 70% of it, whether it be in the off season where I am now, where I'm trying to gain muscle. I need to be eating enough to support gaining muscle and like losing body fat, essentially just kind of recomping. And then when it comes to dieting for the show, diet's kind of everything.
Yeah. And when we talk about like our general population clients who are just interested in, getting fit and strong for life and getting to a healthy body fat level, we throw out the number more of like, being 80% consistent 80% of the time. That won't cut it when it comes to physique sports.
Right.
So that speaks to the level of commitment and discipline. And it really seems like that is having a goal for you like that for you in all these different endeavors is important, as motivation for you to continue through the grind, unless I'm just reading you wrong.
Yeah, no, you're exactly. I can't think of a time in the past like 10 years where I haven't been training for something. And I've maybe taken like a week off or like, but I always have something in the back of my head being like, okay, when I'm gonna get ready to go again, I'm gonna start training for this. And
Yeah.
so
You and
I need that.
you and Carlos are a lot alike in that sense from talking to him.
Yeah.
So really, like, once you're past the beginner stage of building muscle, kind of like for you back in 2012, it becomes a lot more tedious and requires a lot more patience to continue making progress and getting stronger and building more muscle. And this is typically where somebody kind of falls off because they lose motivation. Maybe they don't really truly embrace the process of doing this. I'm going to read you a caption that you wrote recently on your own Instagram that kind of speaks to where you're at with this. You said, "It's been a little bit like Groundhog Day around here lately. Eat, lift, eat, work, eat, again, sleep, and repeat. My show isn't for 8 months, but the work I'm putting in and day out right now is what's really going to pay off next May." I think that just really reiterates everything that we've said about finding joy in the process to keep you motivated, because the show's so far out, just that goal isn't enough in those times where it would be easier to do something other than train, or be easier to make a less healthy nutrition choice.
Yeah. And
That's,
like, I like to say I get like locked in fairly easy, and it's tough for me to want to like deviate. But there are days when I doubt myself, like, what am I doing? Like, is this worth it? And those are kind of like, short-lived. I think, if I want to look back and say I gave this everything I got and I want to achieve, that goal physique, like, I have to do this, And so a lot of times people say like, discipline, like there's no such thing as like motivation, or you're not always gonna be constantly motivated. It's discipline you got to rely on, which I do agree with to a point, but like, I can't remember a time like not being motivated, because I'm just motivated to attack every day to get me down the line. So yeah, I mean, I think discipline, motivation, they kind of go hand in hand, and you just got to be committed to the long haul. Like, a lot of times back when I was, coaching and had the gym, it's kind of like if you're helping people with like diet or nutrition, you almost say like, you got to give yourself 6 months, a year, like before you expect to see any changes, because if you expect to see a huge change in a week, a month, like you're just going to get discouraged. So like setting up those expectations of this is going to take a while. But at some point, like those shows in the past, show day came, and it's like the days just click by, and that day's gonna come, and I want to know I did everything that I could.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned earlier about the thinking about having those hamburgers from Jack in the Box at the end of the show. Did you ever like give yourself a big cheat at the end of a show, or what's your mindset around that?
Yeah, I think so. And even the last show, like we went to like Torchy's Tacos the night of, and then like I just remember grocery shopping like the day before the show, and just being so happy I could get like normal foods of like yogurt, and like granola. I was like so excited.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like a normal person again, versus just getting like rice, broccoli.
Yeah.
And then the next day, there's this place up here called the Biscuit Bar, and they have biscuit sandwiches and all this stuff. And what I missed was a feeling of being like full, like just stuff. Like for some reason, I love that feeling, which is gross. But like, so the next day I was like, I could not get full. So I was just eating all this. I was like, anybody have anything left over? I'll eat it. Like, oh, I just made myself like sick, and which is actually terrible to do, because like your body is in like such a hypersensitive state that like you can really do a lot of damage if you just go from like so low body fat to eating so clean to just eating junk. So
Yeah.
but you really got to be careful. But
Yeah.
that was
I
a
want to
great
make it clear to our listeners that we're talking about somebody who is getting on a bodybuilding stage here that has to, restrict this hard. For our average fat loss client, we're not talking about, eliminating all these foods. This is a hardcore, dedicated experience that she put herself through. And she's exactly right what she said about, going from essentially a super low calorie place to get to this last levels of body fat that she had to lose. And when you prime yourself and when you prime your body in that situation, and then you introduce a ton of extra calories all at once, you better be ready for almost all of those calories to be stored as body fat, because your body wants
water retention. Yeah.
Right.
Out. Yeah.
This is the phenomenon where people, diet down really hard or go keto before a cruise to lose 10 or 20 pounds. And then they go nuts on the cruise and they come back 5 pounds heavier than before they even started the diet. So
right. Yeah.
10 out of 10 do not recommend for the average person out there.
Yeah. And reverse dieting is really big. And they kind of like typically you'll carb load into a show. So like say you might be on 0 carbs for like a week, and then like say like if your show's on Saturday, on Wednesday they might bump you up, Thursday a little bit more, just to kind of like fill up the muscles and fill you out. So you are getting more food those last couple days. I remember my first show, my coach said, get like 3 boxes of Pop-Tarts. Anytime you wake up during the night, eat 2.
Oh my
okay,
gosh.
This is the best day of my life. And so the last one was not like that, but yeah, so you're going from literally like 1,100 calories or less a day, like 0 carbs, to then like if you try to eat 1,100 calories in one meal, like it's crazy stuff.
Right. Oh man, you're probably making everybody hungry that's listening to this.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about another common interest that we have with you. We brought it up a couple times already. That's CrossFit. How did you get into CrossFit in the first place? So when was that?
Yeah, CrossFit. I actually started CrossFit in 2008. So I was living in California at the time. On the flight to California, I was reading a Muscle and Fitness and read an article about CrossFit. And so I started doing it just like on my own, like I remember in my apartment, I had like one of those, door frame pull-up things.
Yeah.
And so the very first workout I did was New Year's Day, 2008, I did Murph.
Oh my gosh.
This is crazy.
Why not?
Because I was like 1 mile, like that's nothing, like after doing, coming off a marathon training and all that. And so then I moved back to the Houston area in like 2009. And then I started, at that time, there was maybe like 4 or 5 CrossFit gyms across Houston. And CrossFit Bay Area was one of them, which is right down the street from my house. So I started CrossFit there. And Thea Taylor was the owner, and she was an Olympic weightlifter and coach. And so got a lot of good instruction there. So did that 2009, 2010. In 2011, was a few partners opened CrossFit Chemo. And so did that. And it really kind of took off as far as like trying to be competitive and entering local competitions and really, really like training for it. So did that kind of 2011 through 2017-ish.
Do you, what did you like about owning the gym? You're not an owner in that gym anymore, but what did you like about that? And do you miss coaching?
I do miss coaching. Yeah. I really, just like knowing that was like people's, like the best hour of their day, and just like made so many great friends there. And hopefully I won't cry here, but I had one client, Mike Grubbs, came to me like very out of shape, overweight, got him, in like actually really good shape to where he was doing the masters competitions. He was killing it. One day he got home from the gym, massive heart attack. And he said, he survived. And he said, if it wouldn't have been for you, like getting me in shape, I would not have survived. And that like that made everything with that gym worth it.
That's so cool. Yeah. The relationships you can form inside those walls, man. I mean, it was definitely very difficult for Blakely to close her gym. And we're lucky that, you know, we still get to coach a lot of those people through digital barbell, but it just really speaks to like, when you are involved in changing somebody's life physically, you get involved in changing their life mentally. And when you combine those things together, you form a relationship that can have a lasting impact between those people and further down the line from the people they touch too. And there's still people that are, you know, influencing their friends and family because of what you did for them back in those days. So I hope you keep that in perspective, you know, even though you're not a part of that gym anymore.
Yeah, and luckily, I mean, like Instagram, Facebook is so great because, like, even though we're in the Dallas area now, just being able to, you know, keep in touch and talk to people still and see what they're doing. You know, still some people are still training there. It's crazy, but yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah, I remember watching you compete at CrossFit Regionals on the CrossFit Kima team, and there was ring muscle ups in the workout. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, that's like a highlight of my life.
Take us through that moment and tell us what you were feeling.
Yeah, and that's the year I got them, right?
Yes.
Because the year before I didn't. So yeah, muscle ups had always been a huge struggle for me. And I kind of prided myself. So like I qualified as an individual, both the years, but went as the team without getting a muscle up in the open. Now that would be, but back then it was a little easier to qualify. And so like the first year we made it, and then it came to my portion to do the muscle ups. Couldn't get one. I almost got one. But the second year I was like, that's not happening again. I hired a gymnastics coach twice a week, worked with him for months, never got one. When I was in the warm-up area, backstage or whatever, before our muscle-up event, I hit like 3. And I was like, oh, and it felt just effortless. I was like, I have got this. I can do it. And went out there, and like we had a huge, you know, maybe like 25 people that had come from the gym. They all knew like my struggle and that I had never been able to do it. And I had done one in the gym like months prior. So I know they were all pretty nervous. And I hit that first one, and they went crazy. And I was like, I was just so happy, just happy to be able to contribute to my team, because I was like, I don't want to be the like anchor, you know, pulling them down. And I think I ended up hitting 5. And it, you know, I still have that video and play it all the time. And just hearing the people screaming and go crazy.
Yeah. That place was packed too.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Even the CrossFit Games Twitter, they have a picture of me, you know, they had me.
Oh yeah. That is so awesome.
That was a highlight of my life. Yeah.
That is a huge milestone. When just, you know, I think people get intimidated a lot by CrossFit because we've talked about this before, but you know, they think you got to get in shape before you start CrossFit because there is intensity involved in it. And sometimes that intensity is something new for people and makes them really uncomfortable. Talk about how pushing yourself through intensity in CrossFit workouts, you know, has translated to confidence and your knowing how to do hard things in the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I kind of like to think of it as, well, like the whole like pain is temporary thing, right? Like, you know, CrossFit workouts in the scheme of things, especially compared to a marathon or to a half Ironman, it's like, okay, a hard 20-minute workout, like, or say 30 minutes, 45 minutes, like that's really nothing compared to 4 hours or 15 hours. Mm-hmm. So having that perspective was huge. It's like, I can do anything for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And just knowing like you take the WOD, for example, like one day you might walk in and it's going to be all your good movements, like stuff you love and you're good at, you know, like I'm going to crush this. The next day you come in, it could be everything you're terrible at. And you're like, I'm going to either be like dead last, I'm going to have to scale, like I'm going to hate this, but you do it anyways. And so that just kind of, that mentality of like, I'm going to, you know, take what the whiteboard gives me or whatever, you know, kind of is like, well, whatever today brings. Yeah. I'm just going to, you know, take it and get through it. And tomorrow's going to be a whole nother workout, a whole nother day. So kind of having that perspective of like, whatever it is, you got to do it. So,
yeah. We've talked before about how like exposing yourself to that voluntary hardship in your workouts just makes you so much more willing and prepared to take on the challenges of life, you know, the stressful things that come up, phone calls you don't want to deal with, awkward conversations you don't want to have with people, confrontation, just shows you are capable of doing those hard things for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've pulled back from doing a lot of CrossFit style training over the years since those days. Tell us kind of why that is and why you transitioned into what you're doing more now.
Yeah, so it was actually in 2016. I try not to like talk about it a lot anymore because I used to talk about it a ton and I've kind of moved on from it. But I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I was having this crazy swelling in my knee and I like could not figure it out. My knee was literally like the size of my head. Like I couldn't bend it, squat. My hands were really weak. My feet were hurting. I was like, what the heck is going on? And my chiropractor actually at the time was like, you need to get some blood work done because whatever is going on is not like muscular or soft tissue. I was like, oh boy, okay. So got that done, tested positive for the rheumatoid factor, which is like a marker of rheumatoid arthritis. And as soon as they gave me that diagnosis, it was just like, I felt like my hands were weak, my wrists, I couldn't like pump a soap thing, I couldn't turn a doorknob, like couldn't hold on to a barbell for sure. And so I was really like having a really tough time doing CrossFit because I couldn't hang on to anything, I couldn't squat. And that was pretty rough. And that was leading up to during the training of my first Ironman, which was like terrifying. Because I was like, what's going to happen if I can't run or whatever. But I ended up like getting on good medication, getting, my diet totally clean, dropping out the gluten, dropping out the sugar. And that had a huge impact on inflammation. And so I was able to continue doing endurance stuff, but I was still scared to push it when it came to weights and lifting heavy, just because my like grip strength wasn't there. So I just kind of gradually kind of got more and more into endurance stuff because I was like, I know I can do this. And so that's kind of what took me out of CrossFit. And but then I actually kind of picked it back up. Once everything got under control, I got kind of mobility back, strength back, started doing CrossFit again. And then even when we moved up here, I joined a gym and was just doing it. I was training for a 50-mile run at the time. And I was like, okay, this will be a fun addition. And was doing CrossFit 3 times a week and I really enjoyed it. But then when I started with my last bodybuilding coach, she was like, stop it. You can't. She was like, it's just going to be too much.
Yeah.
So I stopped doing it when I started prepping for that bodybuilding show and just kind of haven't gotten back to it yet. But
yeah, that makes complete sense. I was going to bring that up if you didn't, because I remember that from your story from back in those days. But it sounds like, and this is to a bigger point, because let's just say that let's treat the rheumatoid arthritis as like, I know it's not an injury, but let's just say it's an injury that you found out that you have. You had a choice at that time to be woe is me. I have this diagnosis, this injury. What's the point? I'm just going to let it all go. But you adapted. You did what you could. You limited the things that you couldn't do, and you focused on something new and getting better and you just, pushed further into bodybuilding, which has turned out to be something that you love to do. So I want everybody listening to this to know that if you get a diagnosis, if you get an injury, follow in Megan's footsteps and continue to do what you can, because, there's a lot of things that you can do, and you'll probably eventually get back to being able to do the things that you want to do in the first place.
Yeah. In the mentality aspect of it, like I made this mental switch after like a year of being like, oh, I've got this, I have rheumatoid arthritis, blah, blah, blah. And one day I was just like, I don't, and when I made that switch, I've had literally like 0 issues. And I know nutrition's played a big part, medication's played a big part, but having that mental aspect of like not being a victim and not letting it affect me, I think has been huge. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I always say like, anytime like me or Crystal like thinks like, oh, I think I might be getting a little sick, I say, think well, be well. Like if you say like, oh, I'm sick, like you're going to be sick. But if you say like, nope, I'm good.
You sound like Blakely.
At least a little better. So
yeah. Heck yeah, that you and Blakely are of the same mindset when it comes to that. And there's so much to be said about just avoiding the victim mentality in general. We could do a whole podcast on that, but I want to start to wrap this up and be respectful of your time. But I do want to ask just about like balance in general. All this stuff that we're talking about takes a lot of time in addition to the discipline and the dedication. So how do you manage, pursuing all these goals in addition to holding down a full-time job and having a relationship? I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, I'm blessed to work from home. That's huge because that like really saves me like a ton of time, and I'm able to like get all my meals in no problem, and being steps away from the kitchen. But I wake up early. I wake up between 4:30 and 5, so I try to get the company I work for is based on the West Coast, so my first like meeting of the day is until 11. So I've got a huge window of time, and I'm incredibly like blessed with that schedule. So it's just structure and routine, and knowing, okay, if I get to the gym by 6, I'll be home by 8. I can walk the dogs. I can get ready. I can, do all this, get ready for work. And then like, by 5:30, 6 o'clock, I know I can wind down and we can hang out, and then until I go to bed at 8. and then, Saturdays are like the weekends are nice. We take advantage of like, being able to sleep in and, taking the dogs on long walks and all that. But it's, and luckily Crystal's very fit and she loves working out and she understands it and gets it. And so having a, partner that supports you and kind of understands, that's been huge too.
It sounds like, unfortunately, the secret hack is planning and discipline and executing on the plan.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm like, even my dogs, like we're like they know different times of the day, like it's time to eat, it's time to do this. So like it's I'm very structured and scheduled, but I love that. It's like days that I'm not, I feel like out of control. So
yeah, and I think like the bigger picture is like, so it doesn't come across as us saying like, you have to be this super regimented person, is that you've done this for long enough to where the habits are in place to where it's like you already kind of go through your day without having to make a ton of decisions because you have the underlying habits that keep you healthy and moving towards your goals too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just kind of ingrained of like, it's like autopilot. You don't really have to stress too much about, how to make it work. Because I've just kind of set up my life. And people say too, like, oh, it must be nice that you can like spend all this time working out and everything. It's like, yeah, but I've spent the last 10 plus years like creating this for myself, so it's not like all of a sudden I'm just able to like do whatever I want to do. But
yeah. And somebody can do that, but they just have to start and then build that process and build those habits over time also.
Yeah.
And end up flexing on stage and doing Ironmans.
Yes.
Well, I want you to know that Blakely and I are definitely inspired by you. We appreciate, you talking about your own journey on your social media so that you can keep inspiring us and others. And just want you to know that you do have an impact on people. So keep it up. What's next for you?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I want to say what y'all do is incredible too. It's so like all the information you put out, and even like the graphics today about the strength standards and all that. It's they'll put out great stuff. So
thank you.
Happy to know y'all.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's next is just trying to get huge so that I can diet down for this bodybuilding show.
When do you officially transition from building to cutting?
It'll probably be January.
Okay.
And so I'm competing in women's physique, which there's like bikini, figure, women's physique, and then women's bodybuilding. I probably have more of like a figure body type, but you got to wear heels, and I can't do that. So that's, I like women's physique, the posing and all that. So it's barefoot. So that's why I've chosen that route.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be in May of 2022.
Well, we will definitely, we'll share some pictures when we publish this podcast, and we'll definitely follow up in May after the show and see how you did and see what you ate afterwards.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Tell Blake that I said hey, and y'all have a good day.
Will do.